What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. It's been a minute, and a lot has popped off in that minute. All right. And I just want to come through and talk about some things that have happened and that are happening, and give my thoughts and opinions on some things, and just have a talk. Have a discussion. All right. So, obviously, if you haven't heard, if you've been living under a rock for the last at least 2 weeks, you heard about the whole COVID-19 situation, coronavirus. And, I'm going to just refer to this virus as, using the Spanish name for it, um, COVID-19, or rather just 19, right? Um, but yeah, COVID-19, that's been a big thing, right? So when that whole situation happened, the schools got shut down and malls got shut down and um, public libraries got shut down and a lot of things got shut down, and that really affected the economy, right? And a lot of people have been having financial difficulties, and become unemployed, at least temporarily, you know. And it just goes to show you how things are really not so set in stone, and pretty much how things can flip in a matter of just not much time. Notice that, you know. um, at the moment, at least, the United States is actually the global epicenter of the virus, and New York has gotten hit the hardest. They within the United States, the New York is the epicenter of the virus. And before this situation really popped off, it was some black folk coming through here. One of them was Waka Flocka, but there was also some other black folks coming through, something to the extent of like black folks can't catch corona. Black folks can't catch the virus. I'm like, this is a virus. It don't give a fuck if you rich, poor, black, white, gay, straight, Muslim, Jew, Christian, Democrat, Republican, independent, you know, whatever, what have you, whatever group you fall into, one way or the other. But obviously, that's not true. And I'm just like, that's really irresponsible to be putting out information like that, because, some folks are a bit weak-minded and might believe the shit and act like don't really give a fuck, and just catch the virus, right? you know, and as well, black folks historically and presently have and continue to lag behind when it comes to healthcare. So again, that's really irresponsible to put out some information like that, especially if you aren't really like in the medical field. You just some, I don't even want, but just some hotep Negro or something spewing out some shit, some bullshit. And didn't Waka Flocka say that he wasn't even black at one point? There's some receipts about that. So I really hope that you ain't using Waka Flocka to be your black leader. I'm just saying. you know, and as well, black people in general, I don't know, I think y'all letting that melanin magic thing go to your head just a little bit. I know melanin is beautiful, it's mesmerizing, it is, a gift from God. Okay, yeah. But, don't give it too much. Like, don't get just too wrapped up in it. Like, it's not necessarily magical per se. I know some folks gonna be offended by that. I don't mean to offend you. I'm not saying that if you know, have melanin that it's not that is bad or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying just don't give it too much to the point where you have low-key brainwashed yourself into thinking that you are invincible or even a god yourself. You're not. You're not. You're a colonized African just like the rest of us. Okay? I hate to break it to you, but somebody got to do it. All right. So then we have Asian folks, and Asian Americans have been receiving some backlash and some racial targeting and whatnot because of this situation, you know. And, you know, it's Asian people's turn. Just like at one point it was black people's turn. It's not right. It's not okay. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's just Asian people's turn, like it was Latinos people's turn at one point, right? Black people's turn, right? Everybody gonna get their turn at one point or another, right? And I think that's just a fight that you know black people probably should just stay out of, because a lot of this may be coming from like white folks, and not saying that no black people were involved in it or anything like that at all, because I don't know for sure, but I know when it comes to this type of stuff, white people do tend to lead the way. It is within their history to do things like this, obviously, you know and Asian people and white people, they have been in similar community settings and similar social situations for a while. So, long story short, that's just a situation between them and that they should handle amongst themselves. And, you know, for other folks, just sit back and mind your business. Especially if folks haven't asked you to come through, right? So then, next thing is like people thinking that martial law is going to come to an effect, and we're going to be like, you got to stay home. And folks have been buying up guns a lot and ammo and all that stuff. You know, they're anticipating this turning into some, zombie elliptic zombie apocalyptic esque situation. There you go. I got it. But yeah, there's thinking that this is going to turn into this like zombie apocalypse situation or esque situation. Maybe. We don't know, right? We don't know what this is going to do for sure, right? I don't think that's exactly how it's going to happen, but I can understand some people being a bit on edge in some situations, depending on, as well as regional too, right? Um, as well, like the situation, the virus, it has, of course, affected the public health, of course, but also, as I mentioned before, like the economy. Like a lot of people have lost their jobs and lost employment, and they're not having like money flowing through, and some people do live paycheck to paycheck. You know, oddly enough, though, like the kind of like the low wage workers, at least the ones working in like the grocery stores or stuff like that, they've been keeping it pushing. I mean, McDonald's and other restaurants, fast food restaurants, still got employees. I think construction work, maybe I'm not sure about construction work, but you know, seeming like they're on the unaffected end of this so far. You know, I know where I live, like the grocery store chain Kroger's have said they needed like 10,000 more workers, right? And what's with these people, buying up all the toilet paper? I understand like the sanitation products, like the antibacterial hand soap, the um, sanitation wipes, bleach, pneumonia, perhaps, um, etc. But and the paper towels and whatnot, perhaps. But I'm like, okay, why? Because like a lot of toilet paper was brought up during all this too. I'm like, why? I mean, I know toilet paper is necessary for hygiene and things like that, but do you really need that much toilet paper? I'm just saying, all right? And as well, like a lot of this stuff should have been like common sense, low key. Like, oh, wash your hands. Like, I've been doing that for quite a while. I wash my hands several times a day before this situation popped off, and even more so now. I'm even a bit like even more cognizant, right? Also, does hand sanitizer work? I use hand sanitizer. That's just a question. Just to throw out there. Does hand sanitizer, really work? Just putting it out there. Let's see. And just a bit about my personal situation at the moment. So for me, like my job, we started teleworking on Tuesday, and like I don't like teleworking, but I'm trying not to complain because at least I have employment at least at this point. But I'm not sure how long that will last because the owner of our company is like, one, um, I guess I should give a bit of backstory about my job before I go into this just yet. But quick backstory about the work that I actually do at the moment. So I work for a clinical research company, and we do um, clinical research studies primarily for pharmaceutical companies who are testing drugs, medications, supplements, perhaps, devices on occasions too, and testing them to get them FDA approved, right? Usually, when it comes to like, drugs, they go through about 3 to 4 stages before they're approved. Typically, they have to go through at least 3 stages before they're approved. They can be approved and put on the market while they're in their fourth phase, but usually they have to go through at least 3 phases of research to get approved, right? So for me, like I pretty much they call us like research interviewers, but basically we're recruiters, right? We recruit people to participate in these studies, right? So that's what I do. Recruit people to participate in our research studies. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge. It just depends on the criteria, right? So anyway, all of the studies that we have at the moment are put on hold. Pretty much, I think at this point, I think all of the studies are put on hold. And we didn't have a lot to begin with, and they were kind of tough at the moment too. You know, and so our studies are put on hold at the moment. So that's the issue. Also, the city that we work in issued a state of emergency. So, long story short, our office is closed for business as well. So, we can't, even if we wanted to and could, we can't bring people into the office to participate in our studies because we can't conduct business at the moment because of this issue of a state of emergency in the city that we are based in, or that the office is based in, right? um, so that's a bit of an issue for like our company. Well, a big issue, right? And the owner of our company, at least one of them, like kind of like the main owner, I guess. It's owned by like three people altogether. But I guess like the head owner, for lack of a better word, pretty much said like he wants to keep everyone on payroll. He has to apply for a. It depends on like the stimulus package, and if they offer a stimulus package for small businesses. It says something to the effect of like perhaps having like loan forgiveness for businesses who take out loans specifically to keep their employees on staff and paid, having some sort of a loan forgiveness program set up. Um, they have to apply for a loan. They said they were applying for a loan on Friday. Usually it takes a moment for a loan to be processed to be approved. That could take a couple of weeks. It could take a month. A month. Sorry, I don't know where F came from. So that's an issue as well. So we'll hear more about that on Monday. So I'm like, just thinking about, pretty much like you could be not having work tomorrow, or Monday rather. You could not be having work. So we don't know. It's up in the air right now. We don't know, right? Thankfully, I'm in a situation where I do have some money in the bank. Thank God, you know. Thankfully, I do have at least one more check coming through from my job. Plus, I have some PTO. Hopefully, they don't try to pull anything if I need to use PTO. I have a couple of PTO days, at least. A few, thankfully. Having a couple of bucks coming through from, tax season, perhaps as well, if they pass that, or if it has passed or whatever, the, stimulus thing for like individuals. I heard it was like either like $1,000 or $1,200, one of them. So that could, help as well. But, it's just, things to think about and things to take into account. But, I'm in a pretty decent situation. I know there's people who are in like worse situations than I am, so I don't want to complain, But, just giving a bit of information about my situation, right? You know, right? Um, let's see, what else can I say about this? Um, oh yeah, y'all heard about the spring breakers still wanting to go on spring break. Them kids want to still go on spring break. And on one hand, I get it, but it's like, you know, their theme song. Y'all know their theme song. It's like, vacation's all I ever wanted. Vacation, gotta get away. Vacation, hope this never ends. So they just want to go on vacation, you know. And as well, I do worry about the kids, and as far as like their learning, you know, hopefully, we already got enough issues when it comes to education, especially public education, especially public education for Black kids. I'm just saying. Um, let's see. Traffic has been pretty good, pretty decent. Gas prices have been pretty good too. All right. So, I've had some plans. They have been kind of derailed for the moment. I was making some plans on some move, making some moves and things like that. And at the moment, it's on the back burner. We got some things to deal with right now. All right. um, let's see. There was an X-Men episode about this situation as well. Not this situation in particular, but there's an back in the 90s there was a television show, like a cartoon, like the X-Men animated series, and they did an episode about one of the X-Men kind of like coming from the future to the past because like this virus took over, and he was trying to find like an antidote for it. And he captured Wolverine, and long story short, pretty much used him and his self-healing abilities to kind of like make a vaccine to cure the virus, or to deal with the virus. I think it may still be on YouTube, but yeah. If I can find it, I may post it in the link section, or the comment, or the description section. Also, Karuchi Tran, y'all know her. What is she famous for? I don't know, but she has spoke up about anti-Asian sentiments that have been going on recently. Now, I should have mentioned this earlier, but I just forgot about it. And that's good that she wants to speak up for her Asian half. And that's fine, but I do give a bit of a side eye because I haven't really heard her speak up about any black things or black issues that affect black people, whether men or women, especially women. I haven't really heard her be vocal about that, and that just makes me side eye, because it's like, well, really, the only reason why you're in the situation that you're in is because of black people. I mean, a black dude put you on, Chris Brown. Black people are keeping you afloat. As far as I know, I've only seen you linked to dating black men, right? And as well as being in black spaces, right? Pretty much, your whole come up came through black folk. And that's okay and that's cool, but I haven't really heard you ever speak up about black issues, which would be, I would let slide if you didn't speak up about this issue. It's okay if you're just like, I just, just stay out of it, It's like, if you're going to stay out of it, right? And just not speak on it at all. But yeah, since she speaks up about this particular issue, then it's like, okay, well, what about other things that black folk have been going through, right? All right. And that's what I got to say about that. What y'all think? What y'all think about that? All right. One more thing I want to talk about this whole virus situation before I move on to some other news. I kind of want to juxtapose this current situation that we have with public health with a situation that happened in 1918, about a little over 100 years ago. There was the influenza pandemic that happened. And that was a major public health disaster. And I can understand people now trying to take the necessary precautions so that that type of situation doesn't happen again, right? And I'll give a bit of a backstory on that real quick. I've been doing like a little reading here and there about it as well. I listened to somewhat of a documentary about it as well. Strangest thing is about this whole situation, I don't think I ever was taught this in school. I don't think we ever went over this influenza pandemic in school or in college. I only seen this at the CDC museum. The Centers for Disease Control has a museum that's open to the public. And back in 2019, I visited the museum twice, once in February and once in April. And I also posted some photos of kind of like the little setup that they have about the influenza pandemic that took place back in 1918. And, I remember I was in the museum. That setup that they have is a bit more off to the side. It's not really part of like the main museum area. It's kind of like the main museum area here, and then it's the influenza thing and whatnot off to the side somewhere, right? And it's like I went to like, oh, okay, this is something that happened like a long time ago. Oh, not knowing that, a year later, we would be in a similar situation, that this would be very relevant now. Like, you know, and the thing is, like, the same instructions pretty much apply now. We don't have anything else better to do. Is just say, like, wash your hands, cover your mouth, wear a face mask. Pretty much the same things that they were doing then, we're doing now. Right? Um, avoid public gatherings, and whatnot. And as well, I posted some of these, some photos and some things on, like, my community tab. I guess that's what they call it, like my community page on YouTube, and as well as posted it on Facebook and Instagram as well. And for just a little bit more information before I move on, they also used to call this, they kind of do maybe, the Spanish flu. They used to refer to this as at one point or another, maybe still do. Its official name is influenza. And influenza has been around in the United States at least since 1647. All right. So it's been around for a long time. It's just that this particular strand of it mutated and turned it into some, like, major health issue or disease. And it's sort of similar to the coronavirus, right? It's been around for a while. This is just a different variation of the virus, That's a bit more potent and a bit more strong, right? And back to the influenza situation, the epicenter in the United States was Philadelphia. Philadelphia got hit the worst in the United States, while New York right now is getting hit the worst, right? And it was so bad, the influenza situation was so bad, to the point that the morgues were overrun. Like, there was no more space for, like, bodies to come through the morgue, and coffins. They didn't even have enough coffins to bury people. All right. And when it came to public health workers, like, um, there they were using, like, medical students, like fourth year and third year medical students. They had to recruit them to help too. They recruited nuns to help. Um, as well, there was a shortage of nurses. And I think to an extent, there is still a shortage of nurses. There's, like, the dude, one of the dudes who's like, we have enough doctors. We need nurses, 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 nurses. That was the thing. So I'm like, if you was a nurse back then and a nurse now, you popping, you know? um, but back to the Spanish flu, aka influenza, aka the Spanish flu. They called it that because it didn't, as far as I know, based on what I've read, it didn't originate in Spain. It didn't. Um, People speculate that it may have originated in Kansas. I'm not sure, at least in the United States. I'm not sure. That's what I've heard, though, right? They called it that because Spain was, like, the first, like, major nation to report it. And at that time, we were in war too, where we were, like, in World War I. So that was the issue too, where people didn't want to, like, governments were pressuring the media not to report on this. That was also an issue. So it was worse than what was being reported. That was a problem too. But Spain did not participate in World War I or World War II, because Spain was kind of, like, going through its own civil war at the time, um, as well. But pretty much it had its own problems. The civil war, I think, ended up leading to the, like, Franco regime that happened, and that ended in, like, the 70s. But they called it that because, like, Spain was, like, the first one to report it, I believe, and they felt like it originated in Spain because they were the first ones to report it in the media. But that wasn't necessarily true, though. They were just the first ones to report it, not necessarily the first ones who got it. right? But I could go on, but I'll just bring this particular subject to a close. Um, I've been reading some. I'm currently in the process of finishing reading a pretty interesting article about the influenza pandemic that took place in 1918. Um, it's an article that centers on what happened in Philadelphia. As well, shout out to like the nuns as well, especially during that time. Segregation, whether it was legal or de facto, was in full effect, and black people were having trouble accessing healthcare, and nuns did go to and deal with like black people who were affected by the influenza pandemic, right? And help attempting to help things like that. So shout out to them for stepping up and doing something like that. All right. But on to some lighter news. I'm at 30 minutes in. All right, so Madam C.J. Walker. Madam C.J. Walker, there's like some Netflix series about her, and a topic of colorism came up. And folks were upset because they portrayed, you know, um, the lighter skinned woman as being kind of like the antagonist to Madam C.J. Walker. Um, and, it's like, well, if the darker skinned woman was the antagonist to the lighter skinned woman, would we be really having an issue? Then it was like, oh, yeah, well, that's just true. That's just true to life. They always hating. Right? But now it's like, oh, wow, okay. Yeah. And let's see. This also can lead into like the other situation that I want to talk about, which is the pro-black men. Because I heard this being pushed, not pushed, but talked about too. Was like the pro-black men being with light-skinned mixed biracial women, you know, and some folks having a bit of a side eye about that because it's like, well, if you're pro-black, how come your woman ain't blackety black, right? you know and that's a interesting question to ask, and but I think we just here's the thing, and it's just how I see things. I really just think, and a lot of people have already mentioned this, but I just think that really the pro-black agenda, if you want to get into it, you know the pro-black agenda is really the pro-black man agenda, you know and if you want to throw in a colorism aspect on it, it's really even more the pro-black dark skin, brown skin man agenda, right? It's for pushing issues that matter to them, to black men, you know, those issues. I mean, please tell me a point in time where issues affecting black women of any shade, really, have been pushed to the forefront of a black organization or a black cause or like a black movement. Yeah, just tell me that. I'm not saying it's never happened, but just tell me. You know, that's something to think about. So, yeah, it's like, okay. It's like these dudes, these pro black dudes have, the light skin mixed biracial wives. And the sky is blue. Right? The sun is hot. Fish can swim. Birds can fly. The world is round. And it's like, okay, like, oh really? Right, oh really? Okay. um but yeah, it's like, sadly, it's just a shock. If you've been paying attention, it's probably not, but yeah, that's pretty much standard. It's like, you know And if you call it out, folks gonna come for you. They're gonna say you stirring up trouble. They're gonna say you a colorist. They're gonna say you bitter, you jealous, you angry. Why are you so bitter and jealous and angry, black woman? This is why no one wants you, right? Even if you call it out in the most nice, positive, sunshine, rainbows and butterflies way, they still gonna come for you. All right. So that's just what it is, you know. And I think it's just something to really marinate on. You know, is it a deal breaker for you? Should it be a red flag? You know, because I can name a couple of these, dudes on YouTube who kind of fall into that, and they're kind of like in the pro-black sector, or at least pro-black adjacent. You know, but I think a lot of black women already know that the pro-black agenda ain't really for them. They either know it or they end up finding out once they get into it. Some women end up leaving. Some women just end up staying and continuing to mammy pick me mule for the agenda. Uh, and I think partially it's because they do get some sort of sense of validation from doing that. That is a thing that I think black women do to get validation when they perhaps can't get it through, you know, the um, beauty lane, so to speak. They come through on this. And, we all need some type of validation one way or the other. So I'm not completely downing them or anything like that, but I'm just saying this is like the pathology that's behind it. And this is why perhaps some black women just can't let go, right? It's like, what kind of like what nourishes you also destroys you in a way. So yeah, that's unfortunate. Another thing I want to talk about is the former NBA basketball player Steven Jackson. He came through via social media, posted a video, pretty much, kind of like a video to like young black men, pretty much saying like, be careful about who you have kids with, the women you have kids with and things like that. And, I think that's a great message, you know, but at the same time, I do think that it's like, well, shouldn't this just be common sense also? Don't have kids all around the world, you know, don't have kids with women you don't really like. Practice safe sex, you know, etc. So it's like on one hand, like this shit should be pretty much common sense, and you shouldn't have been engaging in this activity anyway. And really, no one should have to tell you not to. It should be pretty much common sense and common decency. On the other hand, it's like, okay, come through and say, come through and deliver the sermon for the day. All right, cool. But while he was coming through delivering the sermon, he said something to the effect of like, avoid bitter black women or something about bitter black women. And it's like, okay, that's where things went left, right? That's where you injured the gift, right? And he was talking about his own situation as well. And it's like, you can just talk about your own situation. You don't have to include black women in the mix like that, right? And as well, it does put on the spin as if you were just completely a victim. And I just don't think that's completely true, right? And, again, I mentioned this before in previous videos, but the slave buck mentality that a segment of black men in the community have it never seems to really be addressed full force or even half force. The slave buck mentality, that's just something that really slides under the rug, or goes under the radar for one reason or the other. And if we do talk about it, folks want to go back to slavery times, right? And talk about how, the black man was bred to be a buck and bullshit like that, right? And I'm not saying that that's not valid and that didn't happen, but it's like we're in 2020. I think we know better by now. We've seen plenty of examples of this in what it does to not only individual families, but also the black family as a collective. This is not a conversation that we should be having at this point in history, at this point in time. We should already have been dealt with that. The slave bucks should have already been purged from the community. Hell, sacrifice their ass to the coronavirus. God damn it. Should push them out there. Yes, go ahead, catch the virus. Go ahead. We need to purge the community and do some natural selection shit right now. But back to topic though. So, Stephen Jackson, he came through and he said what he said. All right. And, black men were big up in him. Like, yeah. And then even some black women were big up in him too, And some black women did come through and say, you didn't have to talk about black women in that. You could have just kept it to yourself. Just kept the spotlight on you and just talked about your situation and not really and talked about black women. And then, other black women coming through and talking about, oh, he just telling the truth. He just speaking on what things are, right? And, I find that funny where it's like, for one thing, when I notice this, like sometimes when like black women have kind of like baby daddy issues or whatever, it's like, well, you should have chose better, which is true. That is a factor, right? But when these niggas having baby mama issues, I really don't see that being thrown in their face. Like, oh, well, you should have chose better, which is true. They should have chose better, right? But I know there's more sympathy for these niggas and their baby mama issues than the black women and their baby daddy issues, right? And I think for some reason in the community, I just think that we don't want to bring, take black men to task as a collective for some reason. And I think it's because we may feel like, oh, that's anti-black. Oh, we can't do that. Oh, you're, siding with white supremacy, the system of white supremacy. It's a conspiracy to take down the black man. Right? But when it comes to a black woman, it's like, okay, yeah, we can criticize her. We can drag her through the mud, right? Like when Lonnie came through and said what she said about black men and cheating and whatnot, it's like folks came through and came for Lonnie, right? And it's like, okay, well, all right. But then when this dude come through and say what he said, then it's like, And to be fair, the situations aren't 100% equivalent, but nevertheless, there is a bias that exists when it comes to, say, black men criticizing black women versus black women criticizing black men, right? It's like if you're a black woman and you criticizing black men, you have to be 100% on point. You can't be slipping at all. You can't be a baby mama. You can't be single. You can't be single. You gotta look good. God damn it. They're gonna come for you at all angles. It's gonna be like, oh, you just bitter because you ain't got a man. Oh, you just bitter because a man left you a baby mama. Oh, you just bitter because you could because a nigga ain't never bought you shit. Just anything. All right. So yeah, it's just again something just things to think about. right? You know, because I noticed the biases that be existing and whatnot. I see it. So one more thing I want to talk about. I know this dude is happy about this whole virus situation getting all this press. Andrew Gilliam, he was caught in like a hotel room, overdosed on meth. Thankfully he survived. But he was caught in a hotel room overdosing on crystal meth with a gay male escort, a white gay male escort. So I was like, what the hell? You know? I was like, oh. So, so for one, we got the drug issue. That's already bad enough. Then we got the whole like undercover brother, down low brother issue, and he being gay or bisexual. And I'm like, I'm not sure if your political career is going to bounce back from this, Andrew. I'm not sure. This is a bit much now. But my question is, you know, does his wife, or rather, did his wife, was she aware? Did she know? Did she have a clue? Did she know 100%? I'm just wondering. Maybe she cool with it. I don't know. Maybe she might be cool with it. I don't know. But, that's just interesting, though. You know, um, you know. And as well, during that whole situation, they had said something to the effect of like, oh, meth, crystal meth is very popular in the LGBTQ community. I didn't know that. Uh, um, and now that doesn't really help, Andrew Gilliam's case there. All right. Um, but yeah, hopefully, he can bounce back from this. I'm not sure if that's going to happen exactly, because also there's an infidelity aspect to it too. He cheated on his wife, or is at least assumed that he did. Again, like we don't really know what happened, but it's speculation. You know, how folks gonna speculate, and I don't know if he's has spoken out about this much since. I think he has said he's going to go to rehab. And he has kids. He has like a wife and 3 kids as well. Um, and let's see. Let me do a quick search right quick. Can't really find anything. Anything about him admitting to being gay, bisexual, or whatever. One more thing, I guess. The Brat. Congratulations to the Brat for coming out and living her truth. Good for her. All right. Even though folks I've been speculating and assumed that for years, but good for her. For coming out and living her truth and being honest and whatnot. But she hasn't like actually came out and said it. I don't think she wants to say it. I guess she doesn't want to maybe label herself. Um, you know, but she has did speak on the Ricky Smiley show about it a little bit, and pretty much she said, she was very private when it came to her private life, which is understandable. As well, she said like back when she came out in the public, back in the '90s, it wasn't really like like a cool thing, or like it wasn't really cool to be that back then, right? So I speculate that she may, one, she's a bit more private about it. One, because she may feel it's not other people's business, which I can understand. And as well, it's probably something that she herself, is probably dealing with as well. Maybe even still to this day in some aspect or one another. Uh, so yeah, but congratulations to her. You know, she's found a good situation that works for her. So good for her. Good for the Brat. And I think that's all I gotta say for the moment. So thanks for watching, y'all. Feel free to comment. Feel free to let me know what you think. This is a long video. My apologies, but there's a bit much to say. So thanks for watching, y'all. Adios and goodbye for now.